Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Nun Chet, 58 in Masechet Sanhedrin. We have been spending the last couple days discussing the Shiva Mitzvos B'nai Noach, the 7 Noachite laws. Again, for everybody's benefit, they are the big three: murder, sexual transgressions, and idol worship. And then in addition to that, we have Aleph for Aver Min Achai, Bet for Birkas Hashem, that's blasphemy, Gimel for Gezel, for theft and robbery, and Dalet for Dinin is laws. We saw that isn't the only viewpoint. There are some who add other mitzvot, and we doubt that was the main topic of where the source is for people who have a substitution. In particular, we saw that Birkat Hashem and Dinin were replaced with the concepts of Kalayim and what was the other one? Kalayim and climate sterilization. And we looked at where the sources were for that. And now let's going to share my screen, and we will get started with today. We are on the second to last line of Nun Zayin Amabet. And yesterday we quoted a brisa that taught the following: that the repetition of ish, any man, in Vayikra Perek Yudchet Pasuk Vav, which notes generally the prohibition of incest, that namely not uncovering the nakedness of those who are close relatives. And it teaches that a kuti, i.e. a non-Jew, this is the continuation of what the Brisa says, is subject to the prohibition of sexual transgressions, just like a Jew. So we then quoted a brisa that said that a kuti who has relations with a Jewish prohibited woman is judged according to Jewish law, meaning that we require 23 judges, 2 witnesses, and a warning. But we were unsure to what case that brisa referred. So we have a rule that says that in some case of some sexual misdeed by a non-Jew, we're going to treat them just like a Jew.
Right.
And the question is what's that case? So the Gemara notes that it could not refer to a fully married Jewish woman, because that would lead to the oddity that a non-Jew who has an extramarital affair with a married non-Jewish woman is easier to punish than a non-Jew who has an extramarital affair with a Jewish woman. That just seemed wrong. So as a result, Rabbi Yochanan explained that the brisa was talking about a betrothed nara, and really, on some level, I guess it's betrothal in general, that the idea is that betrothal is a step towards marriage that only exists for Jews. Yeah. It does not exist for non-Jews, and as a result, they can't violate under their system of laws. It's not applicable. So there is no step, and so as a result, when a non-Jew has an affair with a betrothed Jewish woman, well, we can't judge them based on their laws and their procedures, because doing so would result in their being acquitted. So as a result, we need to use our laws, and once we're using our laws, we're going to also use our procedures. And so as a result, that means that we're going to have 23 judges, 2 witnesses, and a warning. So as we pick up on the third wide line of, actually we have to back up a little bit. I said we were on the second to last wide line, but we didn't quite get. So we're going to begin with a proof. The Gemara cites a brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan's point, namely that the law that we apply Jewish law to a non-Jew who has an affair with a betrothed Jewish woman, with a woman who's had kedushin but not nisuin. So she's only a Jewish woman who's gone through just the first step, because again, as we said, as I just mentioned, she can't be the non-Jew can't be convicted under non-Jewish law, because under non-Jewish law, there is no betrothal. So as a result, since this is only something that could be applicable to a Jewish woman, we're going to have to apply Jewish law and therefore Jewish procedure. And so here is the brisa that says that. So Tanya Kavase to Rabbi Yochanan, third line in the wide lines near the bottom of Nun Zayin Amud Bet, middle of the line. So Tanya Kavasi to Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Erva Shabeisdin Shel Yisrael Mimisin Aleha, any close relations that for which a Jew is killed, Ben Noach Muzhar Aleha, a non-Jew is prohibited to engage in that. And we already saw that a warning for a non-Jew also causes the non-Jew's death, so the non-Jew would be killed for that. Ain based in Shel Yisrael Mimisin Aleha, but if a Jewish court would not kill a Jew based on that relationship, so there are additional relationships for Jews that are not that for which they're not killed, but they're going to get kares and potentially lashes. But Ein ben Noach Muzhar Aleha. For those, a non-Jew is not prohibited and is not warned, and as a result would be allowed. Divrei Rebbe Meir. That's what Rebbe Meir says. Chachamim omrim harbei arayos yesh she'ein based in Shel Yisrael memisin alehan uven Noach Muzhar Alehem. There are plenty of laws for which a Jew will not be executed, but a non-Jew is going to be prohibited. And so that's the initial debate. And then we have now a third statement of this brisa that is going to make very clear the position that we saw in Rabbi Yochanan. Ba'al arayos Yisrael, if a non-Jew has relations with a married Jewish woman, nidon b'dinei Yisrael, they're judged under Jewish law, meaning that they need 23 judges, 2 witnesses, and a warning. Ba'al arayos ben Noach. But if they have a relationship that is with a married non-Jewish woman, nidon b'dinei ben Noach, well, then they're going to be judged based on Noachite laws. V'anu ein lanu ela na'ara mo'rasa bilvad. And when it comes to the difference between these two positions, meaning when is it that we're talking about that there's a prohibition because it's with a Jewish married woman, we're really talking about a Jewish betrothed woman. So v'nichshov nami nichnasa lechuppah v'lo nivala. Now, really, the brisa could have added, well, what about if they got married under a chuppah? So they actually are fully married, but they haven't had relations. Because in the non-Jewish world, the way that a marriage essentially gets confirmed is through having relations. In the Jewish world, we have a different method. We have the step of chuppah, of bringing the woman into the house on some level. And so as a result, that that also is a case where there would be a difference. But hi Tana debe Menashehu. However, the Tana of the brisa that we just quoted is the Tana of the yeshiva of Menashe. And we saw that, what did that Tana say? That according to that Tana, unlike the general viewpoint, which is a non-Jew who is executed gets beheading, this Tana says that the non-Jew gets strangulation. And because both of the views, both of the punishments are strangulation, so that's why he didn't also specify that case, because that case isn't as distinct. Because again, when it comes to a betrothed na'ara, that the violators get stoning, right. And so that would also be one of the applicable differences that we would have as a result. The non-Jew would be stoned as opposed to getting the ordinary death penalty, which again, according to the Tana from the Yeshiva of Menashe, would be chenek, strangulation. Okay. V'sava Rebbe Meir kol erva shebeistin shel Yisrael mimisin aleha ben Noach Muzhar Aleha. 1 second. We just cited a brisa, and in this brisa, we said that Rebbe Meir says that whenever non-Jews are warned about relationship, that whenever a Jew would be killed, the non-Jews are warned about those relations. But is that really true? Because we're going to see a brisa, and it's a long brisa, but I've highlighted on the screen the different elements of that brisa which contradict the statement that Rebbe Meir made. And there are going to be 5 elements of this brisa that contradict them. We're going to see in Rashi at the end that he goes through them, so that will help us in a summary fashion. V'sava Rebbe Meir. Okay, so now we're going to do the brisa. V'hatanya, third to last word on Nun Zayin Amabet. Didn't we learn the following? Gersh, as we turn to Nun Chet Amud Aleph, Gersha Haisa Horaso Shalo B'Kedusha. Now we're going to, I'll back up and just note that this brisa is going to talk about a convert. And but the law is that whenever a convert would, and in a convert effectively is as if they are born anew at that moment. And we'll see that in Rashi as we go through the Rashis. But and so as a result, it's as if he has no relatives. And so technically, he could even marry his sister and his mother, etc. But we're going to prohibit that because we don't want him to be allowed to do things that he wouldn't have been allowed to do beforehand. And so we're going to add these prohibitions, but there are certain things that as a non-Jew he would have been allowed to do, and so as a result, even as a convert, we'll allow him to do as well, because he's no longer even at all related to these people. So the point is that the things that we're going to say the convert can't do would also be true about somebody who's not Jewish. So again, a convert, he became his mom became pregnant before she converted, and he was born while she was a Jew. So as a result, he is not fully Jewish. He also has to engage in some level of conversion. So he's considered as a convert as well. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to go through a conversion, but he is considered a convert. Yesh lo she'er ha'em. So he has maternal relatives, ve'ein lo she'er ha'av, but he has no paternal relatives. So ha'ketzad, give me an example of what this means. So I'll show you. Nasa achoso min ha'em yotzi. If he tries to marry his sister from his mother, meaning he has a maternal sister, he has a half sister. Right. That shares a mother but not a father, he will need to divorce her, because when he was a non-Jew, he wasn't allowed to marry her. So too, when he's not allowed to marry her. Mina av yikayim. But if it's from the father only, well, then he's allowed to stay married to her. Achos ha'av min ha'em yotzi. If he has a sister of his father, he has to send her out because it's the aunt from the father, but it's a maternal sister of the father. And so as a result, again, he has to send her out. Min ha'av yikayim. But if the father has a paternal brother who's not a maternal brother, he's a half brother just from the father. So again, an uncle, a half uncle, so to speak. So then she's allowed to yikayim. So then she can stay with him. Achos ha'em min ha'em yotzi. If it's a maternal sister of the mother, so again, an aunt on the mother's sister, so then again she needs to be sent out. Achos ha'em min ha'av. But if it's a paternal sister of the mother, so then we have a debate. Rabbi Meir Omer Yotzi, v'chachamim Omer Yikayim. The Rabbi Meir says you have to send out, and the rabbis say, the chachamim say that no, she can stay married. Now, within those cases, we had 3 cases that are Jewish under Jewish law. If you have relations with these people, you're chayav kares, but you're not chayav misa through the court system. Right. Namely, if you marry your sister, who's your paternal sister. I'm sorry, if you marry your sister through your mother, even your sister through your mother, you're not allowed to, but a Jew does not get killed for that. And similarly, a maternal sister of a father, you don't get killed for that, and a maternal sister of your mother, you don't get killed for that. And yet, in each of these cases, we are saying that a non-Jew, or in this case, a convert, cannot do them. that disagrees with what we saw in Rebbe Meir's general statement that only when the Jewish people have a death penalty is a non-Jew prohibited in that relationship. So Shahaya Rebbe Meir Omer. Okay, so so that's point number one. Now we go back into the into this brisa.
Where's that? Where's that? Where are we learning these laws about the non-Jew? The non, we do they have? I mean, we have a structure we learn in Yevamot, but then, for instance, where does this apply to a non-Jew? Where do we have the
What are
non?
the sources of all these prohibitions of the different relationships? Is
Well,
that
I
what you're
guess so.
asking?
I mean, I
Yeah.
guess so.
So
I
if
mean,
that's what you're asking, we're
we
going to
have
see.
there's a general statement, Gili Arayot. So we have a whole list of those in Yevamot. But where are we coming to? Why do we say that he can't marry his sister or his aunt or whatever it might be?
You're absolutely right to ask that, and that the Gemara is going to be discussing that very shortly. So Shahaya Rebbe Meir Omer. So we're now the Shahaya is the last word on the sixth line of Nun Chet Amud Aleph. Shahaya Rebbe Meir Omer Kol She'erba Shehi Mishum She'er Aim. Any relationship that relates to a mother, a maternal relationship, Yotzi. Mishum She'er Av. But if it's returning to a paternal relationship, Yikayim, then you can survive. So Umutter be'eshes achiv, and what now we're going to do some legal marriages. You are allowed to marry your brother's wife if you're this convert or if you're a non-Jew. And again, although this brisa is officially about converts, the same halacha applies to a non-Jew. And of course, we're going to see it doesn't mean that you can marry your brother's wife when your brother is married to her. That of course would not be allowed. And you can marry the wife of your father's brother. Ushar kol arayos mutaros lo. And similarly, all the other arayos are permitted to him. So, and by the way, la suye eshes aviv, and that comes to include. Now the Gemara, as a quick aside, notes that it comes to include the wife of his father. So as a result, and we'll see. This is one of the prohibitions that we just said is permitted, right? We just said that the wife of your father is somebody that you are allowed to marry if you are a convert or if you are a non-Jew. Again, obviously, it's after the father passes away or has sent away the wife, but we saw, but at the same time, that woman under Jewish law is subject to, if a Jew were to have relations with a father's wife, that would be subject to the death penalty. Right. And so that also is inconsistent with Rebbe Meir's statement that any time we have a death penalty for a Jew, we're also going to have a prohibition for a non-Jew, because this brisa just said that that's legal. Nasa isha uvita. If this non-Jew who converted married both a mother and a daughter, and in particular, Rashi says that we're dealing with a situation where they married them before they became Jewish, and then they all converted. Kones achas umotzi achas. He can keep one of them as a spouse, but he needs to send out the other. V'lachatchila, and in connection with all of these cases, lo yichnos. Really, you're not supposed to. The non-Jew shouldn't marry any of them. So, but if he does, the ones that we said that he needs to send out, he needs to send out. But the ones that we said he could keep, we said he can keep. So Mesha, again, all because we don't want any kind of confusion in Jewish law. So Mesa Ishto, if his wife died, mutter b'chamoso, he's allowed to marry his mother-in-law. So this too is a rule that is not true in Judaism. If your wife dies, you're not allowed to marry your mother-in-law. That would still be subject to the penalty, to a death penalty. And so as a result, that also, even though we said it's permitted, under Rebbe Meir's general thesis, it would seem to be prohibited. But some other versions of this brisa say that you cannot marry the mother-in-law. So nonetheless, we either have 4 or 5 different areas where they disagree. So let's take a look at the Rashi, Ve'ika Dutani Usr B'chamoso, 2 lines from the bottom of the medium wide lines in Rashi. So Hasam over there in Yevamos, Mefarish b'mai pligi. They're over there. It goes through those 2 versions and tells us what the argument is about. But here I want to focus on the rest of the Rashi. Katani mias, but nonetheless, what have we learned? We've learned mutter be'eshes aviv. You can marry, the non-Jew can marry the wife of the father. But that's true according to this brisa, even though a Jewish court would kill a Jew for that. And similarly, according to the opinion that says you can marry your mother-in-law, the same thing is true. V'katani asar and what else did we learn in this brisa? V'katani asar ba'achoso. We said that you're not allowed to marry your sister. Uba'achos aviv, and the sister of your father, v'achosimo, and the sister of your mother, v'aval pi she'ein beisin shel Yisrael memisin alehem. But in all 3 of those cases, a Jewish beisin would not kill a Jew who did those things. They would get lashes, they would get kares, but they wouldn't get killed. So this is all inconsistent with Rebbe Meir's statement that the only time non-Jews are prohibited are when Jews get killed. So that doesn't work. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda lo kashya ha Rabbi Meir aliba de Rabbi Eliezer ha Rabbi Meir aliba de Rabbi Akiva. It's there. The key is that Rabbi Meir has expressed 2 different viewpoints. One is based on the teaching of Rabbi Eliezer, and one is based on the teaching of Rabbi Akiva. And what is this difference? What is this machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva? And how can we use that same machlokas to answer Ken's question about the fact that we have, what are the sources? Well, that's where the Gemara goes next. Tanya, because we have a brisa. Al kain azov ish es aviv es imo. So the Torah says, Bereshis, Perek Bet, Pasuk of Daled, that as a result, a man should leave his father and his mother, and it continues, the Pasuk continues, V'davak be'ishto, and he should cling to his wife, V'ayu levasar echad, and they should be one flesh. So we are going to now go through that Pasuk, and that Pasuk is going to be the source of both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, and tell us which are the relations that are prohibited to a non-Jew. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Aviv Achos Aviv. Then when it says the father in that thing, you have to leave your father, it means you need to leave your father, you need to leave the sister of your father away because she is prohibited to you as a relations. Imo Achosimo. And when it says to the mother, it means the sister of the mother. Rabbi Akiva Omer, and so as a result, and certainly you would be prohibited to have relations with your own sister. Rabbi Akiva Omer, and so that position that we just saw, this Rabbi Eliezer take, now we see that all 3 of these are perfectly fitting with the position of our second brisa, because all of these extra leniencies are covered right there. Okay, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Rabbi Akiva says no. Aviv, Ashes Aviv. No, the prohibition on the father, when it says that you need to leave the father, it means the father's wife, even if it's not your mother. Imo mamish. And then the mother reference is that you need to leave aside your actual mother. And so as a result, now this highlights that is consistent with our original brisa, because a Jew would be liable to the death penalty for these relations, while marrying a sister, a father sister, and a mother sister are not mentioned, because according to Rabbi Akiva, they would be permitted. So as a result, we see that the original brisa is Rabbi Meir based on Rabbi Akiva's thinking, and the second brisa, the brisa that we began today with, is the brisa of that's consistent with Rabbi Eliezer. And so we have a perfect consistency. So now we're going to, everything fits, but we need to finish quoting the rest of this brisa because there's more pasuk here. And Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer would appear to agree with respect to all of the rest of this. Vidavak.
I'm just still a little
Let
puzzled
me
here.
finish. Let's finish the brisa, and then we can go through the questions, please. The davak. He has to cling to his wife. This is the pasuk again. We're continuing the pasuk, perak bed pasuk kapdalit in Bereshis. V'lo zachar, and that means no, not with a male, meaning you can't have a homosexual relationship between two men and engage in that relationship. Beishto, he needs to have be with his wife. V'lo be'eshes chaveiro, he can't have adultery. You're not allowed to take somebody else's wife. V'hayu lebasar echad, they need to become one. Mishin na'asim basar echad. Yatsu behema v'chaya she'ein nasim basar echad. That when it comes to that means that you're only allowed to have relations with a human being, because humans become one when they have relations. An animal, a human with an animal does not become a single flesh. And so as a result, whether that animal is a domesticated animal, a behema, or a wild animal, a chaya, that all of that is prohibited. Now you have your question. Go ahead.
I'm still a little bit puzzled how we of this derivation of the law. If we're saying according to our understanding, according to the law, according to the Torah, that the non-Jew is prohibited from certain relations, but the non-Jew is not a Jew. So who are we to say what their laws are for them? Now, they may live in another country. Do our laws apply to the non-Jew even care what it says here? They have their
So
own laws,
you
their
are
own
absolutely
jurisdiction.
right that it on some there are two levels to the answer to that question. First of all, anybody who's not under Jewish subjugation or Jewish control, you're absolutely right that this is not applicable to them.
Right.
They have their own system. But if you ask what in Jewish philosophy is the appropriate behavior for somebody who's not Jewish, that's what this is analyzing. Because just because we don't have control doesn't mean that we don't have a belief system that suggests what other people should do. That is what is one of the many unique aspects of Judaism, is that we don't say that everybody needs to be Jewish, and we don't say that we don't tell people who are not Jewish that there is a right way to behave. We actually go a third route and say there are Jews and there are people who are not Jewish. And if you're not Jewish, we still believe that there is a system of 7 laws, which are really way more than 7 laws, but 7 general categories of laws that you have an obligation to observe. And part of our obligations in the world is to promote this kind of behavior in the world. And so as a result, when we highlight the lack of ethical behavior associated with Aver Minachai, we're promoting within the greater world the sense of what Judaism requires. And when we insist on just laws, we are promoting the things that Judaism requires of non-Jews. So you're right that we don't have control over the situation, but that doesn't take away from us an obligation to educate the world as to what are the right things
Right.
that they should be doing.
Correct. Well, those are you raised another point about control, which is a little different than their philosophy. But control, I had that question too. We followed the Gemara says Dina de Malchuta Dina. So
Correct.
the
Exactly.
Jewish people went there. It's hard to enumerate the times in Jewish history when the Jewish people actually had control over their own land. Most of the time,
100%
most
correct.
of the time they were subjugated by the Romans, the Greeks, and on and on.
Correct.
And
Correct. Absolutely.
we in fact we say that if it's all things being equal, we would prefer to have it to follow Jewish law in the Jewish court and to bring someone to a Beit Din. Nevertheless, I mean, if you want to drive through a red light because it doesn't say so in the Jewish law, the law of the land says no, you can't drive through a red light. I mean, on and on and
Correct.
so forth.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely correct that the Jewish law and like traffic laws are very I think are the easy calls in Dina de Malchusa Dina that absolutely you have an obligation to observe them, subject to their general observance. But all of your points are absolutely right. Again, that doesn't take away our obligation to promote this philosophy, the philosophies that are based on this. So the Gemara is now we're up to Amar Mar, about midway down on Nun Chet Aleph. So we got to get moving. So Amar Mar, we're going to be going through the analysis of Rabbi Eliezer's position and then Rabbi Akiva's position and why they explain the pasuk the way they do. So Amar Mar, Rabbi Eliezer, Omer Aviv, Achos Aviv. So Ema Aviv Mamish. Why does he say that it means the father sister? Maybe it means the father literally. So Hainu v'davak v'lo b'zachar. So the point is if you're going to prohibit having relations with your father, that's a homosexual relationship already prohibited by v'davak. So as a result, it's not necessary. Ema Ashes Aviv. Well, okay, you want to say it's not the father literally, so say it's the father's wife. So Hainu be'ishto. Well, the father's wife is married to him. So as a result, it's already covered by ishto, below be'ashes chaveiro, and not the wife of your friend. So Ema la'achar misa. So say it means after the father died, and so as a result, it would be permitted in that situation. Or maybe we should still prohibit it. No, dumya de imo, ma imo de lav ishus. No, there is a connection between our understanding of the word emo. Emo is going to mean the mother's sister. And so as a result, just as the mother's sister is not a marriage relationship, so too, when we refer to the father, it can't be the father's wife because that would be a marriage situation. So it has to be the father's sister. Okay, let's take a look about emo. Emo, according to Rebbe Eliezer, achos emo, it means the mother's sister. Be'ema emo mamish, why don't we say it means the mother herself? Hainu be'ishto. Well, again, we already covered a married woman. Below be'eshes chaveiro. Be'ema la'achar misa, to say it's after the husband dies, and so as a result, maybe we should still have a prohibition. No, dumya de aviv. We're going to limit the pasuk because we want to make the comparison between father and mother. So ma aviv delav mamish. It doesn't mean the father himself. Af imo delav mamish. So too, when we say the mother, it doesn't mean the mother herself. Okay, so now how about Rabbi Akiva? How does he understand the verse, and why doesn't he say anything different? Rabbi Akiva Omer aviv eshes aviv. The father means the father's wife. The ema aviv mamish. Maybe it should mean the father himself. Again, hainu v'davak v'lo be'azachar. Again, it means that they should cling together, and that implies a sense of man and woman, and as a result, not two men. So ihachi eshes aviv nami. Well, then in that case, why? Once you're going to tell me that aviv means eshes aviv, so isn't eshes aviv already covered? Hainu beishto below beeshes chaveiro. It's already covered. Through the prohibition of marrying somebody who's having relations with somebody who's already married. No, la'achar misa. It refers to after death, and so as a result, we do need that prohibition. Emo. And then Rabbi Akiva says, imo mamish, that the mother means the mother herself. Well, hainu beishto, below be'eshes chaveiro. Well, 1 second. Isn't that already covered by the fact that we have a prohibition on having relations with somebody who's already married? No, ima ma'anusoso. No, it could be that the mother means the mother who was raped by the father, and so they were never married, and so as a result, the prohibition of ishto would not apply at all. So, b'mai kamifti, what are they arguing about? Rabbi Eliezer Sava, Rabbi Eliezer thinks, as we turn to Nunchet Mabet, aviv dumya de'imo. It needs to be the father just like the mother. What the imo dumya de'aviv, and the mother is just like the father, meaning that when we refer to each of them, it's got to be the same kind of relationship and the same kind of situation. The only way you can have similar relationships is if we talk about the sisters of each of them, right? Rabbi Akiva, and so as a result, that's why he says it's talking about the sister of the father and the sister of the mother. Rabbi Akiva, mutav leukme be'eshes aviv. No, Rabbi Akiva thinks that it's better to have it talk about the wife of the father, de ikri ervas aviv, because when we say that you need to leave your father, it should be something that is core to your father, and more core to your father than your father's sister is your father's wife, because your father's wife in in um in Parshas in Vayikra in Parak Yud Chet Pasuk Yud Bet is referred to as Ervas Aviv, the nakedness of your father. So la'apuke achos aviv. So that is different from the sister of your father, because your father's sister is not referred to as Ervas Aviv, it's Tisher Aviv Ikri. She's called a relative of your father. Ervas Aviv Lo Ikri. And she's not called the nakedness of your father. And so as a result, Rabbi Akiva really wants that the people in this pasuk to be talking about those people. And the best way you can be talking about those people is when you're talking about the woman herself, and when you're talking about your father himself, not as himself directly, but the person that is closest to him, which is his wife. So now we're going to try 3 times to prove whether Rabbi Eliezer or Rabbi Akiva is correct, but none of these proofs are going to be successful.
And this
Tashma.
includes the father's wife, who is not the person's mother, right?
Correct, absolutely. Again, that's the big difference between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer, or these differences. Rabbi Eliezer would effectively allow such a person as long as they're not married any longer, as long as the father's not married to her any longer, to the son, whereas Rabbi Akiva says, no, it's prohibited. Tashma vayikach Amram es Yocheved dodaso. Amram took his aunt Yocheved as a wife. My lav dodaso mein ha'em. Doesn't it mean his father's sister from his father's mother, meaning that it's his aunt who is maternally related to his father? Well, not necessarily. Dodaso min ha'av. It could be that it was from his paternal aunt, meaning his father's sister, who is a half sister only through the father, and so through the grandfather. And so as a result, it doesn't, and that would, of course, this would be a proof against Rabbi Eliezer and in favor of Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva does not prohibit the aunts, and whereas Rabbi Eliezer does prohibit aunts. And so how could Amram take his aunt? Because even if he's not Jewish, the Torah applies to non-Jews. So it would, this prohibition of aunts would apply to non-Jews according to Rabbi Eliezer. So as a result, Rabbi Eliezer says it's talking about a half-sister who's only related through the father. And so as a result, that prohibition wouldn't apply. So Tashma, the gam amna achosi uvas avi hi ach lovat v'imi. 1 second, Abraham tells Avimelech that, listen, Sarah is in fact my sister. She's the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. What is the implication? Miklal dabas ha'em asura. Maybe it's because if he had been the daughter of my mother, she would have been prohibited. And that would support Rabbi Eliezer and be contrary to Rabbi Akiva, who says that a Noachite is allowed to marry his own sister. No, don't think that that's the explanation. But Tizbra, Achosi Havai, was she actually the sister? Of course not. Everybody knows. Bas Achiv Havai. She was the niece. She was the brother's daughter. And so as a result, the Kavan to Hachihu. And once that's the case, Loshna min ha'av, Loshna min aim. When you're a niece, it doesn't make a difference whether the brother, who is the father of this niece, is a full brother, a half brother, etc. You're allowed to marry your niece. It doesn't make a difference what the relationship is. So Sharia, it would still be permitted. Elohasam hakikam, are like, what Abraham is saying is the following: Kurva de achos isle ba'aba, that my relationship with her is a sister kind of relationship on my father's side, below me'ima, and not from my mother, because my brother who had her was only a half brother from my grandfather Terach, from my father Terach, and not from my mother. Okay, so that was effort number 2, and again, not successful. Effort number 3, Tashma. B'mnei malo nasa Adam ba'esbita. Why didn't Adam marry his daughter? Kadesha yisa Kayan esachoto. He did so, he refrained from doing so because he wanted to allow his son Kayan to marry his sister, because there are only two people in the world. Shenamar, ki amarti olam chesed yibaneh. For I said the world will be built with kindness, and this is the kindness was to allow his sister, the Kain to marry his sister. Halav hachi. Oh, if it were not for this reason, Asira, it would have been prohibited for Kain to marry his sister. Meaning, if not for the fact that that's the only way the world would be built is to have this relationship, it would be prohibited. So, doesn't that show that Rabbi Akiva is wrong and Rabbi Eliezer is right? Because you're not allowed to marry a sister, when Rabbi Akiva would say that a non-Jew is allowed to marry the sister because a Jew is not killed for having relations with a sister. No, Haven to Ishtari. No, the point is, at that time, it should have been prohibited. But once the Torah prohibited Cain to marry his sister, it was prohibited. It was permitted for all generations, and so as a result, again, for a non-Jew, it's permitted to marry the sister. Amar Rav Huna Kusi Mutter Bevito. A non-Jew is allowed to marry his own daughter. V'im Tomar Mimnei Ma Lo Nasa Adam Esbito. And if you ask, why didn't Adam Arishon marry his daughter? Kadesha Yisa Kayan Esachoso. It was so that Kayan could marry his sister, Mishum Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Because we should create the world with kindness. Now, Tosos and everybody asks the question, why would you even think that Adam should marry his sister? Yeah. After all, he was married to Chava. So Tosos answers that, top Tosos on Chedam Bet. Mimnei Malo Nasa Adam et Bita. Why didn't Adam marry his daughter? Shekisha Achla Chava me'etz hadas. Because when Chava had from the tree of knowledge, Haisa Ru'uya Lamus Miad, she should have been killed immediately. V'imishum Adam Shahaya Sharui below Isha. And if you say, well, maybe we need to worry about Adam because he would be left without a wife, and God didn't want to do that to Adam, he could have taken his daughter. And so that is the point. The point is that why wasn't Chava killed immediately and then Adam take his daughter as a wife? And that would enable everything to work out great. It's because he refrained from doing so because it was important for Cain to marry the sister so that the world could be further procreated more quickly. Okay, so that
How do we say cave on the Ishtari? Didn't we learn above that even non-Jews are not permitted to marry their sisters?
That's the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says you are. Rabbi Eliezer says you're not. You're absolutely. That's the point. That was the whole answer to the question. You're exactly right. That there is an opinion that says you're not allowed to marry your sister, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to prove which of those opinions is correct. The Ika da Amri. There are those who said that the ruling of Rav Huna was the following: Amr Rav Huna Kuti Asar Bevito. Kuti is not allowed to marry his daughter. Teda Shalonasa Adam Esbito, because Adam did not marry his daughter. Velohi, but that's not in fact true. Hasam Hainu Taima. Here's the reason that Adam didn't marry his daughter. Kadesha Yisa Kayin Esachoto Mishum de Olam Chesed Yibaneh. That maybe it was that he got it wrong, and so that was the alternative way of reading this language. So, all right. So,
who was Adam's daughter?
I don't know that we are given the name of the Adam's daughter, and I don't know
the Chumash doesn't even mention that he had a daughter.
Yes, correct. But the implication is that he must have had a daughter because who was Cain going to marry? Okay, so the Ika da Amri. I'm sorry. So Amar of Chista. So now the Gemara is going to note additional laws that apply to people who are not Jewish. So Amar of Chista. Eved mutar be'imo umutar bevito. A slave is allowed to marry his mother and is permitted to marry his daughter because yatsa miklal kuti ulchal Yisrael loba. Although he is Jewish, he is still subject. He's not fully Jewish, although because a non-Jewish slave has to effectively convert on some level as they become a slave of a Jew, and they have to observe the non-time-bound commandments, and so as a result, non-time-bound positive commandments, meaning that they have to observe all the negative commandments and the commandments that are not time-bound that are positive commandments. So but they are still allowed to marry a mother and daughter. Ki asa Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, so Amar Rabbi Elazar,
According
Amar
to
Rabbi
whom?
Chanina, he said in the name of Rabbi Elazar, who said in the name of Rabbi Chanina, Ben Noach sheyichid shivcha la'avdo uvala neragala, that if a non-Jew sets aside a woman for his slave, and then that non-Jew has relations with that slave, neragala, he is killed for doing that. Because on some level, I think the easiest way to understand it is that is that the slave and the slave woman are effectively married to one another. So me'emas, when is that relationship definitive enough that we would say that they're considered married? So Amar Rav Nachman, midikarule revisa de flanya. When the people say in town, oh, that slave girl, she's married to that slave. When they say that, so then, or she's with that slave, so then that is a sufficient relationship that is recognized. And so now that a relationship is recognized, if you were to have, if the owner, even if the owner were to have relations with that slave, he would be killed. Me'emas hatarasa. And when are they no longer married? Amar Rav Huna, mishipara rosha b'shuk. If she uncovers her hair, if she, or possibly unties her hair, she lets her hair go loose in the marketplace, so that shows she's no longer considered taken and is available, and so as a result, she would not be, there would no longer be a prohibition of having relations with her for the owner, or for anyone else for that matter. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina. So Rabbi Elazar said in the name of Rabbi Chanina, Ben Noach sheba al ishto shelo kedarka. If a Noachite has relations in the unusual manner, meaning not vaginally, so then chayiv, he's liable for the death penalty. Why? Shneamar v'davak, because it says that they should cling together. Cling together implies the lo shelo kedarka, and not in the unusual manner. So Amarava mi'ika midi to Yisrael lo mechayiv akuti mechayiv. That cannot be, because Jews are allowed to have relations however they want with their spouse in a loving and caring way. So in a consensual manner. So Ella Amarava. So Rava says you must have heard it wrong. That what was said was the following: Ben Noach sheba al eshes chaveiro shelo kedarka patur. So if a non-Jew has relations in the unusual manner with the wife of somebody else who's not Jewish, well, then he's going to be exempt. Not that it's mutter, but he's going to be exempt. My taima, because beishto below be'eshes chaveiro, v'davak below shelo kedarka, meaning he's not allowed to have relations with his friend's wife. But when it says you're not allowed to have relations with your friend's wife, it's referring to a davak kind of relationship, a clinging kind of relationship, and that is relationships in the normal manner. So Amar Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Chanina says, Ovid kochavim shehika es Yisrael chayev misa. So having taught one, we're going to again we're talking about different rules that apply to non-Jews. So if a non-Jew hits a Jew, he's liable for the death penalty. Shene'amar vayifen kovacho vayar kienish vayach as hamitzri. Moshe, he looked this way and he looked that way, and he saw that there was nobody there, and he struck the Egyptian. Now, why did he strike the Egyptian? Third wide line in Rashi on Nunchet Amabed, v'yachas hamitzri mishum dehika ish ivri. He was hitting a Jew, and so as a result, he was chayiv misa for hitting a Jew. Now that doesn't mean that we would necessarily apply this. Rambam says that I think we don't apply that law, but again, from a philosophical perspective, he was subject to that penalty. V'amar Rabbi Chanina, another law, hasoter loaz shel Yisrael. If you slap a Jew on the cheek or on the jaw, ki'ilu soter loaz lo shel shchina. It's as if you're slapping God. Shene'amar mokesh adam yalla kodesh. That when it comes to in the ensnarement of man, destroys his holiness. So Rashi helps us understand that you have to break down this pasuk. Mokesh adam. It means if you slap somebody. Yalla kodesh. Yalla is related to the word loa, which is the jaw, and it's as if you hit the jaw of God. So as a result, if you hit somebody, so we have to be very careful with our hands. We want to make sure not to hit anybody. So Makbia Avdo Shabbos Simon. So we're going to have now 3 laws that Rish Lakish teaches. The third of them is going to relate to non-Jews, and with that we'll conclude. Rish Lakish Hamagbiya Yado Achaveru. So since we're talking about hitting, right, Rish Lakish this connects to that as well, because Rish Lakish says if you lift up your hand to hit somebody, Aval Bishalo Hiko, even though you didn't hit the person. Nikra Russia, you're called a Russia. Shene'amar Vayomer la Russia, Lama Sakereyeka. Because when Moshe saw 2 Jews fighting, he says, why are you, he says to the wicked one, why will you hit? Take is in the future tense. Why will you hit your fellow? Meaning he had not hit the guy yet. So Lama Hikizo Lo Amar. It didn't say, why did you already hit the guy? El Lama Take, why are you going to hit the guy? Afal Pisha Lo Hikahu, even though they hadn't yet hit. Nikra Russia, the guy was called a Russia already. So it shows that we have to be very careful. Even if you don't actually hit somebody, just raising your hand is an indication of violence that we say is something that is only wicked people would do. Ze'iri Amar, Rabbi Chanina. Ze'iri says that Rabbi Chanina said, Nikra Chote. Not only is he a Russia, but he's called a sinner. It's as if he's already sinned. Shenemar. The Imlo Lakachti B'chazaka, because when it talks about the sons of Eli and the wrong things that they did in Shmuel Aleph, Perak Bet, Pasuk Tet Zion, it says that they threaten that if you don't do this, we're going to take it by force. Uksiv Batehi Chatas HaNe'arim Gedola Me'od. And the next Pasuk Yud Zion, says that the sin of the lads was very great. So you are a great sinner. You're a sinner. You sinned a lot. If in fact you even just threaten violence. Rav Huna Amar Tikatzetz Yado, that such a person who threatens violence, their hand should be cut off. Shenemar Uzroa Rama Tishaver, that if you raise your arm, it should be broken. So, and Rav Huna Katz Yada, Rav Huna actually did that. He actually cut off somebody's hands. Rashi explains that it was dealing with somebody who was hitting someone else, and that's why he cut off the hand, and that in fact the Beit Din has the right to punish people as a way of creating a fence and protection away from violations of the Torah. So the Amar Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Lazar Omer, Rabbi Lazar says, Ein lo takana elakvura, that in fact it's worse than just getting your hand cut off. The only way to fix somebody who threatens somebody and with violence is for that person to be buried. Shene'amar v'ish zroa lo haaretz, that if the person who's raising their hand, they get the earth, meaning they should get buried. That's how Rashi understands it. For Amar Rabbi Lazar said something else. Lonin akarka el lavali zroa, citing this same verse. He says that actually only the strong have the opportunity to own land. Shene'amar v'ish zroa lo haaretz. Again, a rephrasing of that same pasuk, that only to the mighty is given earth. But Amar Reish Lakish says, "My diksiv." Statement number 2 from Reish Lakish. Why does he say? Why does it say Ovid admaso yispa lechem? This is from Mishlei, Parak Yud Bet, Pasuk Yud Aleph, that one who works the land will be satisfied with bread. Im ose adam atzmo ke'eved la'adama. If you work the land really hard and you plant it and you water it and you do and weed it and you do everything you're supposed to, yispalechem, then you're going to get bread out of the land. Ve'im lav lo yispalechem. But if you don't work hard, you're not going to actually be successful. It's an interesting read because often we say that the success depends on Hashem, but this is saying no, you have to do your part in your share in doing the work. Finally, V'amarish Lakish, Ovid Kochavim Sheshavas Chayev Misa, that if a non-Jew does not work, they are liable to the death penalty. And this is one of the sources, maybe the source, for the idea that a non-Jew is not supposed to observe Shabbos. Shenemar v'yom v'layla lo yishbosu. You shouldn't observe a day and night of not working. V'amarmar azhara shalahen zohi mitasan. And again, when we say that there's a warning for it, that means that they're subject to the death penalty. Amaravina afilu sheni b'Shabbos. It doesn't make a difference what day of the week. It could be even a Monday. V'lech sheva gabi sheva mitzvos. And why isn't this counted among the 7 mitzvos? Ki kachashiv shev al taseh kum v'aseh lo kachashiv. Well, we only count in the Sheva Mitzvahs negative commandments, commandments that say don't do. We don't have commandments in the Sheva Mitzvahs that say do. Oh, 1 second. At the top of Nun Tedem and Aleph, here we close for the day. V'hadinin kum asehu. 1 second. Isn't the requirement to set up a civil law system a positive thing? No, and yet we count it. No, we have to clarify. Kum ase v'shev al tase ninhu. Nah, when you have both a positive and a negative aspect, then we can combine them and have them be a commandment, and that would be one of the Sheva Mitzvahs, and that's the case for Dinin, because on the positive side, you have to set up laws and a justice system, but you also have a negative commandment of not engaging in perverting of justice. And so as a result, that negative commandment of don't pervert injustice is why Dinin can also be viewed as a negative commandment. So we'll close with that.
We say,
have more laws regarding non-Jews, but for them, you'll have to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf.
We do say "B'zeh tapecha tochal lechem." That's what in Bereshit, right? So that
100%.
there is a source then that if someone should work for a living, right?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm just noting the fact that many people don't recognize those sources, but that's all. That is my only comment. Absolutely. The question is does that apply to everybody? Does that apply just to non-Jews? That would be the question with that source. But one would say about this source certainly seems to be applying to Jews as well.
Yeah, to Jews, well, that the source in the Chumash does not apply to.
Well, the question is one of the things actually what we're going to see tomorrow is how do we determine when we saw a commandment before Har Sinai and then at Har Sinai, is that a commandment for everybody, a commandment for just Jews, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we're going to be looking at tomorrow. So how do we determine, when you say, if you view that as a commandment, it could just be that that's just the way of the world as opposed to a commandment, but that in fact, what do you need to have in order to say that in fact you're any particular statement in the Torah, does it apply to Jews? Does it apply to non-Jews? And does it apply to everybody? That's an excellent question that we have to always ask with respect to each of these verses.
Well, that's just a reference to the in this case, I don't necessarily think of it as a law, but we were discussing the person should be working the earth, and that there's a clear statement in the Chumash suggesting that one can derive benefit from his work.
Absolutely, 101%. Not only can one, but that's the way of the world, that in order to derive benefit from the world, we need to actually work it. Absolutely, 100%.
Now, one would be exempt from hitting someone in the case of any punishment from hitting someone in a case of pikuach nefesh, right?
No, absolutely. Even in self-defense, where it's not pikuach nefesh, you would have some ability to protect yourself. So absolutely.
Now, I'm going to say a person is choking and you hit him in order to release the food, whatever it might be.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. 100%. That very much so. There are some important Rav Moshe rulings on exactly those issues and the right and the ability to perform surgery and absolutely 100%. We definitely say that you're allowed to perform surgery even though you're creating a chavala, even though you're creating a wound in somebody, because it's understood that you're doing something in order to fix the person. 100%. All right. Looking forward to continuing our learning together tomorrow. Shkoach. Good to see everybody.